Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions. Jason Stonehouse, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. I'm super excited for our time together. And like we talked about before we hit record, everybody has a story. And our passion is to help them tell it. So with your permission, we're going to start with where you were born, go up to today. We want to talk about all the things you're doing to coach people. We want to talk about all the things you're doing to run your church and do it in a faithful, inspired, passionate way. We also want to talk about the Total Package Playbook. It's a free thing that you're going to be offering to our listeners and pretty much everybody else, right? So we'll be talking about that here in a bit. But thanks again for being here, man.
Yeah. Oh, it's truly an honor. So thanks, Mike.
This is exciting. So Where were you born?
So I grew up in New Jersey. So I was born in New Jersey. I was actually adopted as an infant. So that's a part of the story for sure. Yeah. And, grew up there. My grandparents were missionaries in Africa for a number of years. And my mom was actually born in Africa. And so I have so many just kind of interesting legacies as far as growing up in a household of faith, as well as just really getting lots of opportunities at a young age to really cut my teeth on leadership from I think 9-10 years old.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So what was your favorite thing about growing up there?
That's a interesting, I think I just really enjoyed the pace of life in New Jersey. It was nice there was just always something to do, always something to be a part of. And so I really enjoyed that. And I think opportunities to be in some environments that I could grow. And I've always been a very intentional person. So I've always looked to surround myself intentionally and put myself in places where I could experience things and grow together.
That's cool. So growing up, who was the most influential person to you?
It was probably be my grandfather. My grandfather was just a gentle, just really wise, smart man. And every summer when I was in high school, I would work at a day camp, and I would go and spend, because the day camp was near where my grandparents lived, I would go there and spend some time with them, and just feed off of, if you will, all of what he brought and who he was.
So what did your grandfather do?
My grandfather was the director of the Africa Inland Mission for 21 years. So he was in Africa for 21 years, and then he came stateside and ran the organization for 21 years. So he was a leader.
That's awesome. So in high school, did you have a favorite subject?
Yeah, to be honest, it was business. We actually had a marketing and business program called DECA, Distributive Education Clubs of America. And I loved that. And in fact, it was what I thought my career would be, because I was excelling in all of those things. And they actually had regional, state, and national competitions, and I got to be a part of all of that. And I thought, oh man, this is going to be what I want to be, like a hotel manager. I want to be, somebody that is going to be in these big leadership types of roles.
That gets your competitive juices flowing.
Oh yeah, definitely. And it definitely raised your stress and anxiety, because you had to go one-on-one with an adult, and we did a lot of role play, and that was the way that they evaluated whether you could handle something or whatever. So
that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
So in high school, did you play sports?
I did. I played basketball freshman year, and then I played basketball for my church league sophomore, junior, and senior year.
So that's your favorite sport?
Yeah, definitely. Basketball and volleyball are probably my two favorites.
Did you have a favorite teacher in high school?
Probably that marketing teacher, Mr. Potenza was his name, and so he was the one that really, I think, saw something in me in high school and believed in me.
Sounds like he lit a fire in you too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Amazing how teachers do that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
So after high school, where do you go?
So after high school, I went to Bible college, Philadelphia College of the Bible is what it was called back then. Today it's Cairn University, but went to study youth ministry and wanted to be working with high school, junior high students. And then when I got my first job, really my first full-time job, I just really saw God really show up and lots of opportunities that I had there. And then when I was working in a little bit larger church, we started seeing hundreds of high school, junior high kids each and every week. And they came to us and they are like, Jason, we want to reach our parents,
Mhm,
but we don't think our parents would go to the boring, traditional, stuffy church. Would you create something where we could bring our parents?
mhm,
And so I got an opportunity at that point to really cut my teeth on working with adults
mhm.
because, these kids were bringing their parents and that thing just exploded. And God showed me that, hey, you're not just meant for youth ministry, that there's going to be an opportunity for you to work with adults as well.
Isn't
So
that amazing how kids can be the conduit?
yeah. Yeah. Because kids are so pliable
Yeah.
and I think they're more open to change, whereas sometimes as adults we get so stuck in our ways that anything that comes down, we're just like, oh, I can't go there because we're not willing to change.
Yeah, you've almost experienced too much life, right?
Right, exactly. And you become cynical and all of that.
Or set in your ways, like you said, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So you had this interest in business in high school,
Hmm.
even in even a kind that's in those competitions, right? And
Yeah.
you made a choice to go to a Bible college. Can you talk about that thought process? What made you decide
Yeah.
to do that?
Yeah, pretty interesting story. So I was uh, doing this business competitions, traveling around the country, competing, and I was also volunteering at my church's junior high group at the time. And back then, I just assumed pastors, and maybe some of your listeners even would assume this today. I just assumed pastors were people who visited people in the hospital, like
Mhm.
more chaplain kind of thinking. Like I didn't think there was any leadership capacity. That was before I knew that John Maxwell existed and some of these other guys, But
Yeah.
and so I was having I used to go to this park near my house in high school, and I just would go for these walks and just kind of get my thoughts together. And it was during one of those walks where I just had this clarity to say, where I felt like God was actually speaking to me and saying, like, I can use your leadership ability. I can use your marketing mind and all of that stuff. I need that in my church. And I'm like, really?
Yeah.
So I started asking around and yeah, people churches needed that. In
Yeah.
fact, a lot of the pastors were really good relationally, but they didn't
Mhm.
know how to organize themselves out of a box,
Yeah.
like they didn't know how to create structure, they didn't know how to, work with employees and all of that stuff. Marketing was just a bad word in most
Mhm.
churches because what do we mean we're going to market church, so I was able to just take that and say, okay, maybe I can have something that this brings together my faith, but also brings together the way I'm wired, which is to think intentionally, to think structure, systems, leadership, all of those aspects.
Yeah. Oh, ironically enough, that's how Maxwell ended up in leadership. Right?
Right.
Ended up writing books on leadership, ended up, coaching and teaching and, all over the world now, right?
Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
ironically enough, that's how he ended up in that because
Right.
he saw a need just like you saw
Right.
in terms of what churches were lacking, right? With leadership
Hmm.
training, marketing, the whole thing. So
Right.
bringing a business mindset, so to speak, to the church. That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It was
after
really
you
fun.
so after you graduate from college, where do you go?
So yeah, I stayed in New Jersey. I went back to New Jersey actually and worked full time at a church there as a youth pastor. And then I went to that other church in New Jersey where the kids wanted me to start working with the parents. And that was just so successful that a church in Rockford, Illinois, said, "Hey, would you come and do what you just did in New Jersey? Would you come do that for us and work with young adults, 20 somethings, and the whole all multi generations?" So
Mhm.
I went to Rockford, Illinois, was there for about a year and a half. And on the same day, I got 3 phone calls from 3 different churches asking if I would consider being their lead pastor. And so the third call was like, okay, this is too weird. I'm getting 3 calls in a day from 3 people that don't even know each other. Yeah.
Something's
So the
up.
third call, I'm like, I'm a little slow, but I'm not that slow. Third call, I'm like, all right, I think there might be something going on here. So I took that call, and it was a church in Minnesota, and they wanted a change agent. They had gotten very inward focused, and I would say even a fortress mentality where it was like, we're going to just kind of hunker down here. And there's a whole world, particularly in Minnesota, where there was a real great need for people to be reached. So they invited me to be their lead pastor at 33 years of age, and I got an opportunity to go and lead that. And I was there for 14 years. So it was really just an amazing ride and super fun.
So I'm pretty sure if you're coming in as a change agent, you had some people that were resisting change, right?
Oh, yes.
There's some people in the congregation and probably a few in the board of elders that, hey, we're not doing this change thing, right?
Right. Yeah.
Talk about that for a second and talk about how you overcame it, because obviously you did and you had to. And it's something that, so the reason I'm asking is there are people that are listening to this podcast that are thinking about taking over an organization. They're thinking about being a change agent, okay? And there are things in their back of their mind where they have doubts, and they're thinking about there are going to be people that are going to resist change. It's the way it is in every organization, okay? And so, and I mean, even leadership groups, right? So talk about what you encountered and then talk about how you overcame it, because I believe that those lessons that you've learned, Jason, are a big part of the wisdom you have today that you're sharing as a coach, that you're sharing as a teacher of leadership, right? And you're also your Total Package Playbook, right? So talk about that for a second, because a big part of who you are is a lot of the obstacles that you've overcome.
Right. Yeah. So I will say this, first of all, I made a ton of mistakes, and we lost hundreds of people, that decided, say, I'm not interested in the changes you're bringing, and I'm out the door. And what I learned from that was I focused way too much on the how and not enough on the why. So when you're talking about change management, you really want to unify, you want to get united on why we're making the change, not what the change is. And I focus so much on, hey, we're going to do a different kind of music, or we're going to do a different kind of this, and then trying to sell you on the new product, the new thing, without really taking the time to really, first of all, do a lot of good questioning, being curious, and building ownership, like getting them to be part of the solution. And I didn't create that sense of urgency that John Cotter talks about in his books on change management. I didn't do that sense of urgency that we need. And I didn't really do enough time communicating why. Because what I found today, as I am involved in working with lots of leaders, is there's people that will get real excited about your why. They may disagree on what you want to do. They may even disagree with how you're going to do it.
Yeah.
But they will agree, like, so one of the things I did, we had a lot of older folks, and I said, this is what I would say today. Hey, how cool would it be if your grandchild was standing next to you in church? Because right now your grandkid wants nothing to do with the church. They want nothing to do with God. I said, how cool would it be you would be worshiping right next to your grandchild? I guarantee you every one of those older folks would say, yeah, what do I need to do? Yeah. Well, we're going to need to make some change. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Right. So then to say, we want to reach people like your grandchildren. We want to reach those kids. We want to reach your kids who aren't even coming to church. Right. So how do we do that? Well, we're going to need to make some changes, and they're going to be more exterior changes. We're not going to change the essence of who we are. We're not going to change, the things that you hold dear, but what we are going to change is some of the ways we do that. Yeah. But our why is what's going to drive us. So today I spend a lot more time making sure that we have agreement on the why before we start talking about, well, what will that look like?
Yeah.
Because we can debate all day about what it's going to look like and how we're going to do it. But if we can get together on the why, we can move forward. And I know I'm not the first leader to talk about that.
Have you read Never Split the Difference?
Yes, yes, yeah. It's just powerful book. Yeah.
So he talks about there's a place in there where he talks about the Washington Redskins. Remember this? He
Yeah, I
talks
do
about the
remember.
Washington Redskins, and he talks about how they changed their script to their season ticket holders, right? He also talks about a political fundraiser that they were doing and how they flipped that script. And part of that flipping that script was, do you agree that if we continue to go down this road the way we have been, do you agree that we will be as successful as we could be? Right?
Right.
And the
Yeah.
answer was no.
Right.
Okay. However, if we did this, right, how would you feel about helping us put together a plan to get us there from here? You with me? And so
Yep.
all of a sudden now they're involved. Now it's
Right.
their plan. They're telling you what, you with me?
Right.
They're
Yep.
literally telling you what your plan is. But
Right.
because they're saying it, right? The Bible talks
Yep.
about this. When you speak it, it's truth.
Mhm.
Okay. It's powerful.
Yep. Mhm.
Once they speak it, they own it.
Mhm.
Right. So
Right. Yep.
I'm working with a young man right now who lost his dad three months ago.
Mm.
And a very good friend of mine, who's also a business partner of mine, is his godfather. And he's really troubled. He's incredibly unhappy, and he's really mad about his dad passing away, mad at his dad. And I've been coaching this friend of mine because he's his godfather. I'm like, hey, you need to connect with this kid, right? Gave him sample questions, the whole thing. And he basically got nowhere. In fact, he basically feels like he went backwards. So he calls me in, and I go sit with the kid. I'm now working with him to put a plan together that he's constructing. We're
Yep.
putting a plan together so that he can earn his mother's trust back, and he can get back to where he wants to be, which is with his mom and his brother at their house. Okay. Right now he's in a military academy, and he can't go anywhere because she's afraid of him. Okay. So one of the things that he mentioned to me the other day was, I said, you're going to put together a plan. That's your homework. When we get together this coming Saturday, I want a plan put together that we're going to go over. And he said, why am I putting the plan together? I said, well, let me ask you a question. If I put the plan together and I present it to you, who owns the plan? He said, you do. I said, okay. If you put the plan together and you present it to me, who owns the plan? He said, I do. I said, who needs to own the plan?
That's right.
I do, right?
Right.
And all of a sudden,
Yeah.
this is a kid, Jason, that's been talked to his entire life, ordered around his entire life. Nobody ever asked him anything.
Right.
Nothing. Okay. And so now it's a whole new culture. It's a whole new way, because now we're pulling him out. We're pulling him back to us. Right. And we're using questions to do that. And you absolutely can do it. You just have to get it to a place to where it becomes their idea.
Right. Right. And you can't change anyone, and you can't control anyone. And so it has to be something internal that drives that. And that's really what I do, like with the Total Package Playbook. Like it is really the culmination of a lot of my work, because I really feel like real change happens from the inside out. But too often as leaders and business leaders, and we focus on just one part. And a lot of even coaches, like people in my space who are doing coaching for other people, they tend to focus on their business. How do we help you make money? How do we change your ROI? And what I do that's probably a little different than most is I look at the whole person. I'm like, how's your marriage going? How are you dealing as a dad? How are you thinking through? How are you processing anxiety and stress and overwhelm and overthinking, and really helping the person develop that total package so that all of those areas are healthy, because you bring who you are authentically into everything you do.
Absolutely.
And so that's really what this tool, the Total Package. And so I have the free version, which I'm going to give to your listeners, today. But I also have been doing these like a custom version where I get on a call with people, and I actually.
We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, Do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out calendly.com/Rio760.